But first up tonight, we look at some of the headlines over the past week which have focused on the claims that our education system fails to adequately teach our boys. Dr Paul Baker, Government Advisor to the Education Minister, has said that answers to the problem are complex, but that curriculum, teaching and assessment are all geared towards girls, and that across all subjects the pass rate for girls averages about 10% higher than that for their male classmates. So how do boys learn best? Well, my guest is Leon Benade, Deputy Principal of St Paul's College. Welcome to the program. Well, you wrote an interesting article, and I mean, let me just start off with one of the quotes that you say. You say that we've got a flabby style of facilitation. What does that mean? It
means that modern styles of teaching tend to encourage teachers to move around in a fairly non-directed manner and suggest ways in which students could move in terms of their learning. So it doesn't provide them with a structured and direct approach to the subject being taught.
Has that been a recent development? Is that something that's come as a result of NCEA, or has it been a
No, it's been, this is something that's been developing for decades probably. It's really come about, I suppose, as a consequence of the child-centred approach to teaching, which has got many good qualities, make no mistake, but I'm just thinking that in terms of the boys we teach, we don't serve them well with that style of teaching.
What's the style that boys like? Do they like the direct hitting, this is what you've got to do, get it done now?
No nonsense approach. Let's get down to business. Let's have parameters. We set things up at the beginning of the lesson so that they understand what they have to do, as little flim-flam as possible.
So just like the rest of life?
Well, boys like a no-frills approach in the main.
You see, we've come from a situation though where boys were performing better than girls, and there was an attempt to redress that problem. Has the pendulum swung too far in the other direction?
That may be, but I'm not sure that I'm comfortable talking about pendulum swinging one way or the other. I think our education should serve boys and girls equally well. And it may just be that's what we need to do is to, and I think this is what Dr Paul Baker is saying, is we need to refocus the way we teach boys and not assume that boys and girls can necessarily be taught in the same way.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to raise. We have assumed that, haven't we? I mean, and what Dr Paul Baker and what yourself are raising, the issue is that boys are different to girls, there's a different makeup, there's a different way that they learn. Is it still okay in this current environment to say that?
I think we're serving our boys badly if we don't say it, and I think that's, yes, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote the article, because I wanted to support what Dr Paul Baker is saying, because there's probably a wave of people out there who do not think that what he's saying is entirely politically correct, shall we say, and that whether that's behind the ministry dragging its heels, I'm not sure.
Okay, you raise a couple of other very interesting points that I'd like to touch on. The first is reading, the importance of reading. Where's that come from?
Well, it's interesting. This morning's Herald carries a letter in objection to my article, and the writer assumes that I've blamed boys and their parents and the NCA for their failure. And the writer seems to assume that I think schools have no role to play at all. And that's quite wrong. Schools have a huge role to play, and we must play that role. But it's very difficult for schools to do the sort of work they need to do if students come to school unwilling or unable to read and without the right kind of work ethic. Now, that can only come from the home in the first instance. So parents need to play their role and get those kids reading and being hooked on books well before they get to school.
Okay, well, see, I mean, you raise that issue, and that's one of your key things about your article, is that boys' success has a lot to do with parental expectations and involvement.
Yes, it has.
You stand by that?
Absolutely. And girls' success too. They're not just boys. I mean, children are not going to do well at school if the parents don't back them up. Now, this is not new. This is research that will go back, you know, to the 50s and even the 40s probably. And there's something of a self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy here, because We know that boys and girls who come out of families where parents are keen to see them get ahead are going to get ahead.
So what do parents do? I mean, parents watching this program now, how can they help their kids get ahead? What do you encourage? I mean, I guess you're encouraging, hey, read, and more read. Turn off the TV. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that if you want to have TV, you need to have set hours for it. You don't just give children an open menu to the TV and, you know, you can watch as long as you want. We've got to have set hours. You come home, you know, we've got to do our homework for certain periods of time. We're going to sit down to dinner as a family, hopefully. We're going to, you know, maybe have a little bit of time for TV, and then maybe it's time for more homework. The problem with many families, and I think that this would be true not just in New Zealand but across the world, in Western cultures, is that you know, the TV's become the babysitter of choice. We turn the TV on and it just stays on permanently.
So you want us to get back to reading. You also say, though, that you comment about this, Dr. Paul Baker saying that the curriculum is feminized. I mean, has this been an attempt simply to address the imbalance that boys were achieving better? I mean, we needed to deal with that problem, though, didn't we? I mean, boys were doing better, girls were missing out, so they've addressed it. It seems like girls have lifted, but are boys being penalised?
Boys are still doing well in areas they've traditionally done well in, where perhaps girls have struggled to compete. So that hasn't changed. And we need to be careful when we say the curriculum's been feminised. I mean, that's quite a wholesale statement. But there's certainly areas, and the area that I touch on, for instance, English, Dr. Baker refers to technology.
Yeah.
These are areas that, I mean, technology, surprisingly, that have become very much more suitable to the style of learning that girls excel at.
Right.
So let's put it that way. So we're not saying that in technology, when boys are taking technology, they're having to do girl-type subjects for their studies. But what it really means is that the kind of planning required, the kind of reflection required, suits a learning style boys don't do well in.
Okay, so tech drawing has become design technology, woodwork has become, technical drawing has become graphics, woodwork has become design technology.
It's not just a change of name, though. It's the kind of activities required of the students that favours a learning style girls exhibit more readily than boys. And I think that's really what we probably should be talking about when we talk about the curriculum becoming feminised.
Okay, the immediate response from the Education Minister, Steve Mahari, was, look, the problem is literacy. We've invested $32 million. That's going to help solve the problem. Is he right?
Well, it may help address the problem. I don't think it's going to solve the problem, because the fact is, if a 13-year-old walks through the gate reading 2 years below his chronological age, there's not much you're going to do in a 5-hour day to turn that around. And when I say not much, you know, you try nevertheless. And at my school, we've got a very strong literacy program. We focus on literacy by way of staff professional development. We focus on literacy by the style of teaching we offer in the classroom and the methodologies that we use and the sorts of activities we get the boys to do. But ultimately, they have come into the gate with certain disadvantages in literacy. Now, schools have not necessarily contributed to that. So the problem then must shift, you know, must obviously then lie perhaps in the home.
So we need to get parents involved. Just finally, I mean, we were talking earlier off camera about you doing your doctorate, and I mean, the development of teachers is one of your pet subjects. If you had the chequebook, if you were Minister of Education, what would you like to see happen in terms of development of teachers?
I think we need to see a little bit more focus on directed teaching methodologies that actually gear young teachers to thinking about how students learn and how they acquire the written and spoken word. So we're not just talking about high schools here, you know, we're talking about from kindy upwards. And those are possibly the most important areas, is those foundation years. But and we see all the time, students do well when teachers teach with great purpose and with clear structure.
Leon, appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
My guest was Leon Benade, Deputy Principal of St Paul's College.